Yes, call to order and roll call, please.
Okay. Ms. Gunn?
Here.
Ms. Kalick?
Here.
Mr. Hunt?
Here.
Ms. Claps? Here. Mr. Barsadi?
Present.
And Mr. Marhall.
Here.
Okay, quorum is present.
This is a board meeting of the Riverside School District 96. Today is October 18th. This is our regular business meeting. And do we have any public comment? Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing as there are none. Martha, the superintendent's report, please.
Thanks, Joel. So we are going to start with some student presenters from Hollywood School Garden Club. So I'm going to introduce Principal Ms. Hefner, who I think will introduce the other Garden Club leaders.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here this evening. I'm really excited to share with you the Hollywood Garden Club. The Hollywood Garden Club was a vision of Miss Nelson. It was started approximately maybe 6 years ago, and the very first year, we have no documentation of it, no pictures, and putting this presentation together was a challenge, but they put in, one of the first things they did was put in a butterfly garden at Hollywood. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Miss Nelson. She's done a fabulous job developing this garden club. This is Miss Nelson and a handful of third graders who participated in Garden Club last year.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to be here to talk about Garden Club at Hollywood. So I have a lot of presenters with me today. You guys can come closer, I'll introduce you. All right, so we have some of our third graders here and they're gonna tell you about Garden Club. We have Elsie and Penelope Brooke and Leo Lelucius, Oliver Mattinson, Emmy Cardoza, and Vivian Curtin. So we're gonna start.
Thank you for inviting us to present today to the school board and the community. We are third graders at Hollywood and we are here with Miss Nelson to talk about Garden Club. Here are some of the activities we did in Garden Club last year. We planned Earth Week activities for kids at our school. We played games with recycled materials during recess. Our club made the games and collected the materials. We made plant people out of soil and grass seed. We would make sure our plant people had a lot of sunlight and water. Then we started seeing grass grow out of their head like hail. A lot of us picked the milk jug planting as our favorite activity. We planted vegetables in milk jugs because it was too cold out for the plants to go in the ground. We watered them, and then when it was warm enough, we took them home and planted it in our own garden. In the late summer and fall, we enjoyed eating the vegetables with our family. We also planted vegetables from our garden at school. We had a gardener from the community come in and help us plant tomatoes and basils. She taught us about pruning and stacking plants and also about companion planting. At the beginning of this school year, we harvested our tomatoes and basils and took them home to eat.
I'm up now. We do have some past Garden Club projects that we wanted to show you. They're still growing at Hollywood today. We have our butterfly garden, which was many years ago. We planted 18 different plants in our butterfly garden around our bird bath, and we still take care of them today. We also had a landscaper visit in previous years, and we planted a bunch of plants in the front of our school just to make it look even more magical at Hollywood. We also have some future garden club projects coming soon. We have a leadership day teaming up with Hauser. The 8th graders at Hauser and the 5th graders at Hollywood are going to be building plant boxes for us. So we have so many options now for all our garden club things. We're teaming up with the Hollywood Community Association. We get to use their land, and Walsh Construction is donating materials for us. Last year, we also prepped the plant boxes by painting rocks with volunteer clips so we can make a rainbow in our new plant boxes. So we're very excited for that. And we have a couple more things for students to share about their experience in garden club.
Tommy Ames, our classmate Tommy Ames says, my favorite activity in garden club last year was planting our milk jug plants. I planted my zucchini and tomatoes in a pot at home, and my family ate them when they were ready.
I loved planting zucchini. I planted it in my garden at home, and I made zucchini bread with the zucchini. I tried the tomatoes, but I still don't like tomatoes.
I really like doing the activities for Old Week because we got to recycle basketball and other fun activities. Our classmate Finn Johnson says, I loved planting the tomatoes in the milk jugs. It was a lot of fun.
I liked doing the activities for Earth Week because it was fun creating them from the recycling. Hello, my name is Vivian Curtin, and Garden Club is a special club at Hollywood. First, you get to plant flowers and vegetables. 2, watching them grow and checking on them. And my mom loves gardening, and that's how I got into gardening. 3, sharing tomatoes with friends and family. 4, they are fresh and nice.
And we are very excited to plan again this year with our new garden beds. Thank you. All right, we can go this way. Oh, yes, that was in the practice. That's right. We would love to field some questions. Any comments? Yes.
How do you guys decide what plants to plant?
Go ahead. Take it away.
We just do random things.
Random.
That's a good one.
Random things. That works too.
Once,
The landscaper brings us things, or the butterfly garden we had it prepped by a company and they helped us, and then they tell me what vegetables they want in their milk jugs, and then I buy them from the store, and then they get to pick. That's pretty much what we choose.
once the raised beds are built, what's going in them? Like anything?
A lot of vegetables we're thinking,
awesome.
just having a lot of options for vegetables. Oh, sorry, you guys can go. Yeah, oh, thank you.
What do you
We're
want to
agreeing
put in
here.
them?
Yes, we also, in Hollywood, we have the tower gardens where we have, Mr. Murray has that in 2nd grade with lettuce, and these guys got to work with that last year.
That's so cool.
And we brought it to our lunchroom too, so cross your fingers, we can grow some vegetables for the lunchroom.
Yeah. Very cool.
Any more questions?
Is there anything you plant to try and get later in the fall when it starts getting colder so that you can see it more at school?
Well, now, you guys had the tower garden last year. What were some of the things that you guys got to keep growing? Because they grew the tower garden all year long. So is there anything that you guys liked growing there?
I think we grew spinach.
Yes.
You want to mention your plan for a pumpkin?
Oh yeah, Miss Hefner thought of a pumpkin idea. Well, it's a team idea. Yeah, we're thinking putting that in the garden, and then it'll be ready by fall. Imagine the possibilities. I don't know, carving, seed counting in kindergarten. We do that with the pumpkins. We have options.
Very cool.
Very good.
Anything you guys want to share? Anything else? Any other questions?
Does anything get brought inside for the winter?
I don't know. I'm thinking mostly our tower garden. And for our garden club, we kind of started March, right? Yeah, we were starting in March, and that's why we did the milk jugs, because we couldn't quite get outside yet. But we had all these milk jugs on a cart we would bring outside if it was sunny, and we would bring inside if it was too cold.
We've started throwing around the ideas of vermicomposting. Now that we have the school lunch, and believe it or not, there are some children that don't pick the broccoli, the fresh broccoli, and they don't eat it. And sometimes we have some vegetable waste, but there's a few staff members who have worms in their garden beds, and they don't do well in the winter.
Yeah.
So we don't want worm sickles in our gardens, so we're gonna bring the worms in. We have a garden, a vermicompost container from kindergarten that we'd like to use throughout the winter. So they don't know that yet, but that's something we just started talking about.
It's in the work.
And the garden beds that are being done with Hauser students, that's a new project coming from Hauser too. There's a student leadership group that has planned a project at each of the elementary schools, and Hollywoods will be building the garden bed. So you're gonna hear more from that group in the future too, the Hauser group. But Hollywood, you were great. We really appreciate knowing about the garden club, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
We're gonna move on to more student discussion, and students aren't here with us tonight, but we have information about the Central Hauser project. We actually have some serious details from DLA Architects and from Ramesh around draft budget and timeline, et cetera. So we're gonna get into kind of a full-scale presentation on our current status with the Central Hauser project. So with that, I should introduce Steve Wright and Ryan Kelly and Ramesh Nair, all with us tonight to talk about kind of where we are currently, and then also just to answer questions that the board might have. You want to get us started?
So, my name is Ramesh Nair. I'm the owner's rep for all the construction projects that happen every
And I know,
year.
Ramesh, they're going to want you to speak into the the YouTube live people.
There we go. How's that? Is this on? Can you hear? Oh, it's just for them. Okay, got it. So I'll be overseeing the construction projects that come up each year in the school district. And for our projects over 24-25, we're looking at a major project in the Central Hauser campus, which is to redo the parking lots and the playground fields. And more importantly, there are some utilities that are underground that are in bad shape that are going to get replaced at the same time. So there's a combination of projects that are taking place over a period of time. We had initial discussions on this project over the last 6 to 9 months with the board, where we presented various alternates between using artificial turf and natural grass. We presented pros and cons of each of the materials, and the board decided at a fairly early stage to go with natural grass. So we started with that process, and we went through the design process, and DLA will discuss that in some detail. But the important thing out here is that because the location of where we are between the parking lot and the play fields, what we need to accomplish is fairly complicated. So we do have to take the parking lots offline, most of it in the phase 1, because we have to remove the asphalt, and then following that we have to excavate almost 6 to 8 feet down to install the storm detention system. And the storm detention system essentially traps water and prevents it from being put back into the village storm systems during a major rainstorm. And the part of this is governed by the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, the MWRD, and we have to pull a special permit from them to get this work underway. Each year we design it, our engineers size the system, but when you submit it to them, there are going to be design changes. We've always had this process. Every year we've had this issue. But here what we're trying to do is as much of an early start as possible, and we looked into the possibility as to why we couldn't place the storm detention system in the play lot, in the field, because that would have left the parking lot open. The major reason why we couldn't do that is the play field is at a lower level than the parking lot, and the cost of excavation would have gone up substantially to place this storm detention tank. So that's one of the questions I believe that may have been fielded by the board as to why we did not place the detention tank in the field. It's a question of elevations. And if anytime you excavate and you remove soil from site, it's an expensive process because you actually have to move the soils off-site in large trucks. It's the schedule goes up, the costs go up. We wanted to be aware of this. We kept a really tight lid on the budget, and as it is, the budget has crept up because our scope has increased. But essentially, we want to start the project. The timeline that we have right now is by November, we want to go out to bid. We receive bids in December. We review them through December, and early January, at the January board meeting, we would like to make a recommendation to award. And then that starts the contract for the selected contractor, and by March, we want to start the project. Now, there are pros and cons of starting in March. By starting in March, we can finish the job, we believe at this time, by August. But by the time school reopens, we are done with the parking lot, we'll be able to turn that part over back to the school. The disadvantage that you have is there's going to be noise and there's going to be dust past spring break because it's an outdoors project, heavy equipment being moved here. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. As far as noise and dust, it's a construction project, so there's very little that we can do to control that. But our plan out here is that we would put some fences around the contract and such that the contractor cannot start before 7 a.m. They can't run their trucks out here on site. You bring a truck, you load, and you leave. You can't be sitting out on site, running. We'll try and put that into our contracts to keep a tight rein on noise. But I just want to make everyone aware that noise and dust is definitely going to be an issue. The next part, the second phase of the project. So in the first phase, most of the parking lot is being taken out. A small portion of it will be available for parking during the school year, but the majority of it is gone in phase one. But phase two is when school closes in June, when they take over the rest of the field and they start working on the entire site. And we intend to complete the project by August. Now, this leaves us with the planting season for the field. So there's an extended period when the field will not be available, starting in September to May of 25, when the field will not be available. So that's a drawback. We've got to be, when we go with natural grass, there's a planting period because we're planting seed in here. You let the seed grow and take on the soil. There's a 6 to 9 month period that we have to wait. So the full field will only be available for active use in 25. So that's an important aspect to take into account from the schedule standpoint. What else do we have? That's about it. Yeah. So that's the basic description of the project. We have some lessons learned from all our previous projects too. We've created adequate allowances in the budget as to cover, eventualities, because it's not an exact science when you excavate on site with regards to soil excavation. We can do the calculations, but you're going to find something in there which you didn't plan for. It's underground, and we put allowances into the budget to try and cover this. I mean, the most important thing for us as architects, construction managers, owners reps, is to make sure that the budget we present to you is as realistic as possible. That's why we've identified as much of it right now, so we can, if any questions, please do ask us as to why we set up the numbers the way that you see them. It's basically to make sure that when we give you a number, we don't want to get, run into a problem where we exceed the budget by $1 million or $2 million, because then you run into issues that you're trying to justify the project after it's been awarded. We are definitely trying to avoid that situation. We've had extensive discussions, obviously, and have kept the board informed through the facilities committee over the past 5 to 6 months. So I'm pretty sure that most board members are aware of this project, but feel free to ask me any questions. I'm here.
Well, Well, so if you're taking the parking lot offline starting in March, so is there a contingency plan yet for where the staff would park for the rest of the remainder of the school year?
So the majority of the parking lot is being taken out, yes. We are, I mean, if you look at the phasing plan, it looks like about 15 to 20 spots would be available, but essentially we are not making any arrangements other than either it be street parking, or we have to talk to the village to see, what they would allow us to, use as far as the neighborhood parking goes. But as far as the construction crew, they would have to stay within the confines of the lot. Normally otherwise in construction crews, they end up parking all over the, they take up a lot of the village, the roadside parking. In this case, we're gonna try and tell them that you have to stay within our project site so you can leave those spaces open. So as far as teachers parking, we haven't made any alternate arrangements. Yes.
We've had some conversation, so, yeah. do you
Yeah,
want-
that's been discussed a lot at facilities, trying to coordinate with the village on potential other locations, but also just making it understood that there is going to be more street parking for the staff in the neighborhood, and that's people often don't like other people parking in front of their houses, but there's not really a way to get around that, so it's going to be a lot of just communication, and staff is also going to be communicated with in terms of what's available and potential alternates. With the phasing, Ramesh, the phasing basically leaves, I'm assuming, access along the building during the school year,
Yes.
so that kids can get in and out. And
Absolutely. So if you look at the phasing drawing in the board package, you'll notice that we're leaving a section like so wide open. We want to take this section out because the storm detention is right here in this grayed area that you see. And that's where the major excavation takes place. So this whole section will be open during construction. So you have access to the exits of the building. And this section also be open too.
And where are we in this, maybe more for DLA, but where are we at in terms of discussions with the village on just some of that coordination, and then where's the MWRD permit at?
Hi, I'm Ryan Kelly with DLA Architects. So to answer your question, Joel, we met with the village, I think it was about 2 weeks ago now, got their preliminary feedback. Our plan is to submit drawings to them at the end of this month. We have gotten approval to submit to the MWRD at the same time, so they'll do kind of a dual review process. Obviously, there'll be comments and coordination that we'll need to do, but that's our timeline with drawing submittals.
Was there any major thoughts from the village? Any review comments so far, or just
No, I think it was pretty straightforward. I mean, it was really details. I mean, about hydrants that would be moved, access. Chief Buckley was there as well, so we had some comments about access around the building, which gave some credence to our phasing plan, keeping access around the entire building. But no major design comments. I think it was pretty understood what was required, the scope and the size of the detention that we're providing. And obviously they'll review those calculations specifically when we submit.
to MWRD? Okay.
As well as the village. Yeah.
Martha, could you maybe speak to what impact this will have on recess and gym, both across Central
Yeah.
and Hauser?
Sure, and actually, we're going to talk a little, we had a parent meeting this morning with Central parents to talk about some of the preliminary playground ideas. We've been in conversation, I have been in conversation with the village manager, been in conversation obviously with both our principals at Central Hauser. I mean, I will be really clear, it is going to be a very significant challenge. One of the things we've talked about for Central students is to make sure, could we get the Hauser gym spaces available? Could they, again, not have gym classes, PE classes during the lunch period? Today we were brainstorming with families. We've been brainstorming. I've been brainstorming with the village. There is not any quick and easy solution. to get children outside in large groups during what we absolutely understand are going to be some of the nicest months of the school year. Today, conversations came up about reaching out to in the grassy area near St. Mary's. I know there are parks. As you all know, it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes to walk with a group of students, and when they have a 25, 30-minute break, it's just not enough time. I have, and again, I don't want to sort of get into details that it may or not be at all acceptable to the village, but is some idea of being able to play out front, but what would that require in terms of barricades or fencing? I can tell you when we had the project at Ames, we were planning to work with, we had worked with the village, I would call sort of the block party setup is using barricades. Ames is a very different traffic area than here. I can't imagine that we could close off Woodside Road, looking at Joel, close off Woodside Road for even 30 minutes, an hour at a time. It's a major thoroughfare through town.
Woodside is one of the busier streets in town.
So truly, we are asking for community engagement on this. Talking to the village manager, she was very supportive. She said, let's continue to walk through the village spaces together and really think about this. So I want there to be a solution. Mr. Gatz, Ms. May, Mr. Hervalis, everybody has really been sort of leaning in and putting our heads around this, and we're not coming up with a great solution, to be really honest. I'm hopeful that we will come up with something. We've talked about staggering the lunch period so that smaller groups of children can be out front. I know children do play in this front of school area. I don't like the idea of 200 children playing outside. It's one thing when you see one group of students out there. So I don't want to be cavalier or say that we haven't been thinking. We've been thinking a lot, and we just don't have a solution we like.
And so the major impact is really going to be from the beginning of phase 2 in March through the end of the school year.
Right.
And then as we roll into August and the field takes time to come online, the students will still have access to the playground and to the court, but they won't have access to the field for recess and gym.
Yeah.
And that's a huge impact to Hauser because that's their outdoor PE space. So there will be no field. And Ramesh, I heard you say last time we talked about there would be no field in this spring of 24, fall of 24. I just heard you say spring of 25.
It's a full 9-month process. So we start from September of 24 till almost end of May, June. It's a slow process to make sure the field catches. Otherwise, you start playing in that, it'll get ruined and you'll go back to square one.
And that's what that's based on, is just getting the grass established.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
there was an
Not adding
initial
traffic.
thought that perhaps by the end of fall of 24, it might be ready, but you're thinking right now, based on typical grass growing and establishment, that
Correct.
it really needs that spring as well to get going.
Yep.
So, and the reason for the phasings is, as you just mentioned, to only take the playground offline for that 3 months. It would be available in the fall of 24. Yeah. Yeah.
And so for the sorry.
Go ahead.
For the since Hauser utilizes the field for its PE space, what happens to PE? Can it move to the gym, or are there too many sessions going on at once?
It stays indoors. One thing, if you have a Hauser student, you know that they all run the mile, I believe, on Wednesdays. That probably won't be impacted because they
go on
follow
the outside.
perimeter. Yeah. That is not the most favorite activity that children engage in. So,
That's fair.
so yeah, and during the pandemic, you recall, they would do walks around, and that also was not a highly preferred activity. So I know Ramesh and Ryan and Steve have promised that they'll get us a capacity, like that playground, hard surface play area, that what's basketball and Foursquare, needing to understand the group size that could be out there is a number that, once we have that to work with, we could talk about adjusting lunch periods even. That sounds easy, and it probably doesn't take a lot of sort of insight to understand that there are very elaborate schedules, the interventions, the supports, the special education services, not to mention the specials, the art, the music, the PE. So we start to play with lunch period, we start to impact, student needs. So, but that is something that Mr. Gatz is taking a look at, is some possible, or having a different grade level that just eats lunch a little bit later, a little bit earlier. So these things are all, sort of in active consideration.
The two other elements that I'd like to bring up is be sensitive to the neighbors, because that's part of our outreach program. So instead of a regular construction fence that may be, say, 3 or 4 feet high, we're going to be putting perimeter fences on both sides that are 10 to 12 feet high to constrain noise, dust, and activity sight lines. So that'll help with some kind of privacy as far as construction goes. That's number one. The second thing is our garbage disposal and our trash is in this section right now. So we have to have access to that. So we're going to try and reach out to the village to see what other alternate places, whether we could move it out to the front. It's going to be a challenge, because if people are parked here, we will back a truck into that place to pick it up. Or the pickup needs to happen at an early enough hour when there's no cars out there, or a late time after school hours. They can't come between, say, 7 and 3 to pick up garbage. So we've got to discuss that issue as well. So there's a coordination there.
And that's a discussion with, I assume we use flood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jim, I'm not sure. Jim would know.
Jim,
Might
we
be hiding
use
it.
flood disposal for trash pickup.
For trash pickup.
What day?
That's
No,
flood. That's
the
flood
the
disposal, right? The company. It's the village company.
Flood Brothers.
So that's
Yeah, we'll
that's
talk to
the
them to
first
see. Yeah.
route to start discussing with them.
Yeah.
In the plans, there's sidewalk widening / a bump out on Woodside. Has that all gone through the village at this point?
Not yet. So I discussed this with Martha briefly. We're going to bid that as an alternate at this stage, because I believe there are some other nuances in it that should be considered before we combine it with this project. So we'll proceed with the discussion with the village and see their input. We'll bid it. We'll bid it as an alternate, but our main award is still limited to this playground and parking lot.
So we'll say that that's a possibility, but not a guarantee.
It's a possibility. We had that conversation in the preliminary review with the village. And they had some questions, some concerns that we'd like to come back to Facilities Committee with before we decide to include it in the project.
Minor in comparison, but will the access to the bike parking between March and May be impacted, or can we move the bike racks elsewhere? Are there, okay.
We are moving the bike racks.
Okay.
They're going to bring them over. Yep.
Yeah.
It's part of the plan.
And let me just back up too about the outdoor play. So kindergarten and first grade students will still have access to that front playground. We're going to leave that untouched for now. We would like to renovate that. That's something students talk to us about.
Yep.
Whether or not that waits for a future phase of the project. The courtyard is still available, right?
Yeah.
So grade 2 often plays in the courtyard area. So that's taking care of 3 grade levels. And then, again, we have to figure out third, 4th, and 5th. So potentially that's not as daunting as the entire student body.
Ramesh, the intent, I think, you've already said it, but to make it clear, all the asphalt parking lot will be complete, barring anything,
August, yes.
by August.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, we'll be turning over all of this by August.
And there's work down through towards the courtyard as
Yes,
well.
this section, there's a little bit of repaving that's required, yes, all that stuff too.
So for the areas that we're not using because we want the grass seed to attach now, are we fencing that off, or
It's
how do we?
getting fenced off, correct.
Okay.
It's gonna have a construction fence for about 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Are we putting any signage on it to let people know why that's there, or?
Sure,
what,
we
yeah,
put some signage
okay.
up too, that, we seed to grow, yes.
Yeah, we talked about fencing, watering, signage is all part of the base contract over that time period through spring of '25.
The maintenance portion is added to the specification, so the contractor bids on it is responsible to maintain that. They'll have access to it to come and get our plants going, so.
So cost right now? I think you said the cost went up because scope increased. What were we considering?
It's substantially, I mean, as I said, we're trying to be as careful as possible, because if you notice from where we started 2 years ago to where we are right now, it's a much larger project, because we've added the utilities as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're replacing quite a lot of utilities in this section, and part of the requirement is also, ComEd has a main line that runs out here. A new fiber optic line was added last summer, which now has to get relocated. I mean, it's going to get displaced, and we are adding that section to the contractor's work so that he does not disrupt any activities in the school. So that work may have to be done off hours. So it's crept up from, initially we had looked at a project that went from 4.5 million, 5.5, now it's sitting in that $6.5 million range. But we feel that we can trim some portions out, because that 6.5 included the work in the front of the school, which we're not going to be doing right now as a straight up project.
That conduit work, that ComEd work is partly where the transformer
Correct. The
line item comes in.
The intent is to leave it in place, to leave the transformer in place, but we want to move the basic feeder that's sitting on top of the pole underground. That's the majority of that project, which is, from a safety standpoint, a much better solution than leaving it with an overhead connection.
Especially right over the playground.
Right, and that's another one that we have to start early, because ComEd does not react very quickly. Even though this work is relatively minimum, it's still going to take like 4 to 5 months to get on their books to get this done.
They have their own process. Have you been able to, I realize this is probably more of an open question than anything, but are there any new transformers required? Because that's a long lead time issue
Not
lately.
yet. No, not in this project. We're not changing any of the service feeds. And ComEd has, so far as I know, we do not have any power upgrades, or this transformer is old. It's fine as of right now. It's functional.
Other questions?
So I had questions. So when we get to the construction subtotal, so underneath some of these expenses that are listed here, I understand. Construction allowance. I believe that's just for overages, correct?
Correct.
So general conditions, OH and P. I'm not aware of what that is.
Okay, so sorry about that. So general conditions, overhead, and profit. So general conditions are the contractor's overhead cost to run a project. That means the superintendent, the fences, his trailer if he has one, fuel costs for the machinery, any supplies that they have to bring to site, something that they cannot obtain through the subcontractors, but it's their overhead cost. In a project, it can range from anywhere from 6% to 25%, depending on the size of the project, complications. If you have to pay for a project manager that they have who comes and attends meetings, the people in their office staff, their overhead has to be passed on in a proportion. All that's part of the general conditions. The overhead and profit is, we do cap that off in contracts and public contracts as listed in our front-end documents.
So I guess design contingency, that's essentially the money that we're setting aside for all of this is essentially, no?
So design contingency will become zero by the time we get to 100% documents. So that's to clean up some of these things, that questions are being posed right now. We want to talk about what are the implications of adding or decongesting the site, how do we get to the final documents. So that number will keep on shrinking, and whatever is left over, we just return it back. We don't, as if we didn't touch it.
Okay.
So it is just so I want to say that we will not exceed that number that you're seeing out there, but we need some margin to adjust the budget as of this time.
Can I rephrase it? It's also, and any one of you can criticize this, but basically because the drawings right now are at 90%. There's additional refinement that will come with the design to get to that 100%. And so some of those refinements may add costs. So the idea is to capture those costs now and not exceed
That's correct.
that amount.
Makes sense. Especially if there's still items to go before various boards for approval.
And this is typical in any big contract.
I guess the last part, then there was some charge $250,000 for escalation.
Right. So escalation is in the construction world is synonymous with inflation. So a contractor who's bidding the job, so we typically escalate a project through midpoint of construction. So the contractor has to project for the fact, for example, labor unions change, and they have their new rates come into place in June of a given year. So that step up, that they have to adjust for that. So when they bid it, they'll adjust that price. It's part of escalation. Fuel costs. We're in a very fairly volatile fuel cycle right now. So especially with heavy equipment, they may consume anywhere from 25 to 100, 150 gallons a day. They have to make sure they can capture that. So there's an escalation factor that they will add when they bid the project. So these are all numbers just trying to protect the budget so that especially in long lead time projects, projects that run 1 or 2 years, 4 years, you're trying to ask a contractor to project out costs that they don't know about. And we are trying to prevent them from just adding a crazy number. Like a few years ago, when we ran into this inflation cycle where inflation was running anywhere from 6 to 8%, we saw a tremendous increase in prices. So we are trying to protect the project from those kind of numbers by adding an escalation number.
So we're not seeing those same numbers of...
No, it's come down significantly. So right now we're averaging about 4.4% annually in inflation costs, and we try to capture it through that number. But you can have selective large-scale jumps. For example, concrete has risen significantly this summer. It had a 30% increase. So if you're buying concrete on the spot this summer, you would have been paying a significantly larger price. Rebar went up. While most other costs were somewhat stable in that 4.4% that I'm talking about, but you have selective materials that can go because of shortages, demand, because a large project came up somewhere, a large infrastructure project started eating up a lot of those resources, prices start to spike. So this is a large civil project for the most part. So the limited number of materials that we could run into that could cause problems. So we're trying to hedge against that price volatility through the escalation clause.
Okay.
So I guess I just do have one question. Then why you've been saying it's 4.4%? Why don't we just put it at 4.4%?
That's 4.4% annually on an average of products. Now, in this one, I wanted to take a look to see. Now, for example, asphalt prices are highly dependent on oil prices. Oil prices are spiking right now, but we reach the end of the asphalt cycle as far as the paving season ends this month, end of this month. It spills into a little bit of November and then restarts again in March. So if you have to hedge for the prices for next year, if the contractor is going to bid it this year, he does not know how much asphalt is going to cost, so he may add 5, 6, 7% to his bid to cover that eventuality, and we're trying to protect against that.
Do you have any thoughts on the type of work being site work and then the estimated price? Is that going to make it less competitive, more desired by contractors? And this, I realize this is just an opinion and you're not being pinned down.
No, we should be able to attract a good, healthy set of contractors to bid on this project. The difference is, again, a lot of lessons learned for us in the sense that we want to make sure that we don't attract a type of contractor, what we call brokerage contractors. That means they don't self-perform any work, but they manage other contractors. We feel that unless a contractor has skin in the game where they feel that they have to self-perform too, then the project becomes a lot more interesting to them. They bid it a lot tighter. So we're adding a clause in our documents this time that at least 10 to 15% has to be self-performed, so that's not just a brokerage contract. It should make for attracting a lot of contractors who just do this kind of work. And the good thing about this is this does not have an interiors component, where we're doing interior renovation. It's a very large civil project, essentially. So you're likely to see not more than 4 or 5 subcontracts on this project. A little bit of electrical, a little bit of probably, fence work could be in a subcontract, but the majority of it on this excavation, paving and all that, we're going to see that in 1 or 2 contracts. It is a very attractive project, by the way, because of the size. You normally don't get concentrated projects like this in this range, with a fairly tight schedule. So it's fairly rare. And typically schools, public works do attract these kind of projects. And I feel that we should be getting some good bids on this one. And if it goes less than the numbers that I projected, yay.
I'll just say, and then I'm happy to move on. Obviously, this is a project that people are really excited about. It is riddled with challenges, as you made us aware. I don't know that I was fully aware of the extent of the challenges that we would be facing as a result of it. And we kind of live and breathe this all the time, every month. It's on the forefront of our minds. So I just can't underscore the importance of communicating, getting it out there to, to staff about parking, to the community, to brand new Hauser families whose children will not use the field for a whole year. I just even remember at Hollywood when we couldn't use the playground until maybe November because of the equipment, et cetera. It was very, I think, frustrating for families not to really know what was going on. So to the extent that we can get ahead of it and communicate and over communicate, because when all of these disruptions start coming to a head, you're going to have a lot of, or perhaps have angry people who didn't quite see it coming.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't see the extent of this coming, and again, I'm talking about it all the time.
Today.
Okay.
We thought we were going to.
Yeah.
Ramesh and I had talked last week after facility advisory, and he said, I think we can preserve more parking. And as he said, as they looked at the elevations and the changes, literally you are hearing today, and the whole community's hearing today, for those that are tuning in, right? That there is going to be a lot less parking available than we thought. The recreational field being off limits also in spring of 25 is information also for me tonight. So there are many, many complexities, and I completely agree with you, Stephanie, that it is about communication. We will communicate, but I feel like I need a little more certainty around some of these aspects before, and a little more time to sort of problem solve too, before we bring it forward. We wanted to bring this to the Board of Education tonight. You have been, I think Mr. Gatz jokes, we've been talking about this project for 11 years. It probably has been. I mean, I've been here for 8, and this has been sort of on our minds. We've done some community coffees and information gathering, certainly 6 years ago, 5 years ago, in earnest really now for 2 years, the board really actively planning for this project. I don't think we're the first school district to ever try to renovate a parking lot and a playground and a recreational field all in one space. But yeah, I mean, I am sort of right there with families and with staff around concerns related to parking and concerns related to outdoor play. And outdoor PE. So I know, talked to Miss May just earlier today with not even knowing about the turf and the grass growing in the spring, and she said, what's our option? I said, our option would be to not do the project, right? I don't want to be so, again, not trying to be cavalier or glib about it at all, but
You're not being cavalier.
Yeah.
The reality is to dig up this entire, how many acres is it? Can you guess?
2.5.
How many?
2.5, I believe.
To dig up 2.5 acres takes time, and then like Ramesh said, the landscaping takes time to grow.
Yeah.
And you're not being glib, it's everything has its own time to happen, grow. And we've talked about the parking issue, that's really a communication issue.
yeah.
That probably the bigger part on our students is, like you said,
Right.
Stephanie, it's the use of the fields. That's gonna be something that people are gonna have a hard time with.
But I guess the thing that I just sort of this is something, like you said, Stephanie, this is something everyone wants, and so, like you mentioned, it's going to be an impact, and there's not going to be a good solution to this, okay? But this is something that's been on our minds for a long time. I guess what I'm just sort of asking is that there is understanding. I mean, we're going to come up with, as I look at it, the best worst situation. You know, nothing's going to be ideal. So if we can just make, like in the communication, just sort of, there has to be some understanding across the board that this is, in the end, this is what we want, but it's going to be a little painful getting there. So I do think the pain, though, will be definitely worth it in the end. I mean, this is going to be a fabulous field, a fabulous playground. I mean, these kids are going to definitely benefit from this. The staff's going to definitely benefit from the improved parking. It's going to be all around significantly better.
One of the things I would like to bring to the board's attention is that once things get more formalized and we start to finish up the documents, we have input from the village and MWRD. I normally put out what's called a community newsletter. If you recall, when we did the Blythe Park project last year, before we started issuing a newsletter which the principal was sending out to the parents, which indicates the schedule, the type of work, the challenges. We were trying our best to reach out, and it really did help because I never heard any complaints during the construction period because we were putting out that newsletter. The reason we haven't put one out yet is it's still in flux right now, and we didn't want to make a commitment to something and then pull it back. That's harder to take back. If I had said you could have the entire parking lot and then said, no, sorry, it's only 90, you're getting 10%, I think it would have been a bigger blowback. So just trying to be careful on that subject right now. Once we finalize this, we get to 100% documents, I'll issue the community newsletter number 1, and we'll go through both Pete and with April and get it out to all the communities.
And I'll be communicating directly too, and already just like with staff communication, I think some of that will operationally come from Jim about parking, et cetera. So there's a lot to it. I will say that, and I know we're going to switch to something a little more exciting, and that's going to be the playground visioning here in a few minutes, because it does feel very positive. David, to your point, we met this morning with about eight parents, I think we had in the room. Parents of kindergarten, first and second graders, all younger families, which, so their children will see the benefits of this at Central School. And we had the same level of conversation, the frustration around outdoor play and where could they go. And we talked about St. Mary's, and we talked about the triangles, and we talked about being out front. And I would say parents left with great appreciation for the board's effort around doing this project. They didn't leave with my goodness, how is my child not going to have the best outdoor play space for, a good part of the school year? It was, thank you for working so hard to try to make this happen. Now, granted, this was a group of parents that showed up very committed and interested in the project, so I'm not saying they will represent all families, but I think there was, certainly we see that this is challenging. We see that the long-term goals are really positive for students.
I feel there's a question that needs to be asked, and it pains me to ask it, but I feel like I must. So, given the long time period where the field will not be available, if we were to use artificial materials, I'm assuming, and perhaps I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that we wouldn't face that similar times constraint.
That is correct.
So, in all likelihood, what would be the loss of usage there? Would be a few months, or?
For switching to artificial turf?
Yes.
There will be no loss because once it's in, it's in. It would have been in August, provided we got the material in time. It's in, you would use it from day one. Yes. It was pointed out during our review. We went through the pros and cons of each of them. That was one of the things that we would go into this process where grass takes time, but I believe the board made an informed decision that this is the way to proceed. So.
But Dan, also that question came up among staff too. I think when the decision was made, and I'm not asking the board to redo that decision, that wouldn't be my place anyway, but and there were a lot of approvals based on it being natural grass, et cetera, but that question came up. When we start to look at the realities of the implementation of this project, I don't think we realized natural grass took 9 months to grow.
I think we always knew that the fall was going to be non-available, but the spring was not. That's a more recent development. or assessment.
Sod doesn't make a difference.
No.
It has to take, I mean, and the thing is that grass will go dormant in winter, so it still has to take, that second growth is required for it to take.
We are going to shift to a more positive. We'll talk about
Yes,
the playground.
anything
Unless you were
else?
with anything else.
I'm
yeah.
good.
This part was fun.
This part was very fun. So not to make light of all the challenges, we've been talking about them for a long time and we'll continue to do so. But as we have talked to everyone, all stakeholders in this process, we did so with the playground as well. So the one component of this is the actual playground, the playground equipment, and we went through this process at Ames and at Hollywood, met with the students in what we call a visioning session. We met with staff to do very much the same thing, and then this morning with parents, as Dr. Ryan Toy was talking about. So I'd like to share with you some of the drawings behind you that some of our students did. We took them through a few different activities. We asked them to, and you'll see this on the video, we asked them to pick out their favorite equipment. So if you can see behind me here, we asked them to select number 1 and number 2 choices of equipment, and there were more boards than this, and then to explain their ideas, what they liked, what they didn't like, and then we asked them to draw their playground. You know, what would that be? You know, no budget, blue sky, what would that look like? And they came up with some amazing drawings and some amazing explanations. Talked about things about inclusivity, accessibility, and again, this was not driven from us. It was all their ideas and what they wanted to see. And I won't spoil anything, but they also surveyed their classmates. Some of them came with lists of things that they wanted to include, so it was really impressive. So with that, I'll share with you a video that you may have seen already, but it's worth watching again.
I think it's about 10 minutes long.
Yeah. Oh, you got it there?
I was like, there's a legit Ferris wheel up there. That's awesome.
So this is Dr. Ryan Cook. She's the superintendent. Think of her as the principal or the principal. So she's here today. You know, Mr. Wright and Mr. Kelly are both from the firm, and they're here to talk to you guys about ideas for the playground. Next summer, we're going to make a big mess back at school. We're going to take the parking lot out. We're going to fix the grass area out there. But we're also talking about putting a better playground that's suitable for everybody, not just the small in the front. So this is a chance for you guys today, and some of you talk to the classes, and teachers have some discussions, to share ideas, and to give feedback to the adults that are going to be working on the other side of it, because what you guys think is going to be good is really important for us to know.
As Mr. Katz said, we are going to be designing and building a playground just for you guys. When you have an idea that you're looking to work on, in fact, we want some experts. We're told that you guys are the experts. We need your input. So this one is all about what would I do if I built a school. So I've got 2 young boys about your age, and we read this book all the time. And this is Nolan's favorite page. And this is the playground. So what we want, we're going to get to that, we want your big ideas. Anything that you put on the playground is rolling. So we come over here. We're going to gather around different ideas about pieces of playground equipment. Zip lines, things to climb on, swing on, hang out in. So what we'd like you to do, if we can make it formal, number 1 is going to be pink. All right, so I'm going to give you a little sticker. So you come through and look at all the pictures, and your favorite one, I want you to put a pink sticker on. Your second favorite one, I want you to put a blue sticker on.
I think that's a really hardest because there is hard to decide. The second favorite was this because
All right, so let's go around and just tell us quickly what you picked for number 1 and why, and what you picked for number 2 and why you picked that. Starting back with you.
I picked Ames also for the zip line. I very much enjoy zip lines. So if you're playing CAD, you can make quite hilarious CAD lines. My second pick was the playground to the top right.
Got here?
Yeah.
All right.
What did you like about that one?
I like that one because it had a tunnel slide. And I like the design of like the brown, green, right?
Number one pick.
That one with the slide.
This one right here?
Yeah, because I really like slides, and I found that slide also have another slide.
Yeah.
And then my second one was over there. Yeah.
This one? Oh, I see it.
Because I also like instruments too.
What did you pick?
My first choice, I chose the
Spider climber?
because I think it would be really fun to like climb on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And my second choice was that that playground because when we were discussing with my class, a lot of people said that like they wanted like another like tower on the playground, like said that they wanted to see like a tree.
So did you discuss with your class and get input? So you're a representative.
Yeah.
Draw a picture. Everybody gets to draw on their own playground. Oh, you're doing a great job.
It's not. And then it's
Right.
no, this what is pointing there.
Oh, okay. There you go, Brown.
I do enjoy it. I think you shouldn't do it chips. What chips? Brandon is like in a wheelchair. It can like hold them in it.
In the swing?
Yeah, so like the wheelchair, so they don't have to get it out.
Great idea.
You can hold it, but you can only hold one at a time.
They like dodgeball? Yeah.
Trampoline. I've seen that. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Rock ball. We got that in the front, so
Yeah.
definitely probably don't want it up there. Field goals are thousands of dollars. There's this kid who just came up with it, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
It's good to get everybody.
Yeah. Jackie. So these I don't have blue and have purple.
Half blue and half purple.
Yeah, so just pretend that this is purple.
Okay.
Because we're just giving ideas about what dreams. I actually was like sleeping on it. I was like, should I go to the meeting? But then I got up and I was like, okay. And my mom had whipped coffee and all this stuff on the table. And she's like, David, I want you. You should have a formal breakfast and pretend it is on a formal playground. So get in your tuxedo right now. Oh, that's how you do it. So I thought that this could be like a wheelchair seat to like picks up the wheelchairs and then the ones in the wheelchair can control it.
Ah, I like that.
And then this is a slide that's purple and blue stripes. Cute. It's a lot old. I drew a ramp for people with wheelchairs so they could get off, and there's like a bridge right here that leads to the side. And there are monkey bars, and there's like a swing but for wheelchairs. And there are regular swings for people without wheelchairs. And then there are like these Velcro darts that you like throw at the floor, and a ladder for people with no wheelchairs. Yeah. I'm telling you, slide with me. Who doesn't like a tunnel slide? I don't like me too. Fair. First, I made a zip line because most people love zip lines. obstacle course where you're supposed to go from like this to this to this, and some monkey bars, and then like things I have to like jump over. And this is just like a rock climbing wall. It looks really weird, but I really didn't know what to make. Climb up this ladder to get to this swinging bridge, and if you go down there, there's a little ladder to get to the monkey bars, and if you fall, you'll just fall into a ball pit. And then if you go up this ladder, you can either go down this big tube slide, or you can go down this fireman pole. And then I put a merry-go-round here, some swings, a bench, and then a trampoline. And these little step climbing things, just in one room. And then below it, there'd be a merry-go-round, an in-ground trampoline.
In-ground trampoline. We had suggested that maybe we keep the playground in the front for the small kids, right?
Yeah.
And do a bigger one in the back?
Yeah.
That was your idea, right? Yeah. I think that was a really good idea, but we gotta try and make all of those ideas fit back here. So we're gonna have to see what we can do.
We hadn't talked about before, that we are gonna do some new playground in the back, because right now you don't have any playground equipment in the back,
Yeah.
right? Nice. So that'll be an improvement for sure.
So thank you for all of your help today. And we're gonna take those ideas, we're actually gonna share some of your ideas with your teachers just to get their opinion, to say, oh yeah, that's a cool idea, that's a cool idea. So they're gonna get a chance to kind of look at these boards too and tell us what they think you guys will do. But you guys have a better hand on it because you do this.
Guys, you guys did a great job this morning. I'm really proud of you and the ideas you brought forward and shared with everybody. It's going to really help the adults move the process forward, because in the end, it's going to take the adults to make the magic happen. But you guys gave us the ideas we needed to get in that direction. So thank you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. And when we have an idea of what the final project might look like, maybe you guys will get a sneak peek before everybody else.
Yeah.
All right.
I was saying, and I wanted to say thank you also. It's great to meet you and great to hear your ideas. And I also said to Mr. Getz, you will do a wonderful job expressing yourself. You just do a great job working together. And I was impressed when you introduced yourself. I was impressed when you just described your project ideas. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
So I have to tell you, we had about 25 minutes or more of footage, so paring that down was difficult. So thank you for your time. Not only is this a fun process, I think fun for the kids, but certainly fun for us, but these ideas really end up in the playground. They did at Ames, they did at Hollywood, and they will here as well. So, any questions?
Was there any equipment or ideas that really stood out in your minds besides the trampoline?
A lot of climbers, a lot of talk about accessibility. They really wanted climbers that could be accessible for people in wheelchairs. That we heard many times over. So a lot of climbers. Not as much zip line as we've heard in other visioning sessions. So
Swings and tube slides.
yeah, swings and climbers and slides. Yeah.
You know, higher things that they would find.
Yeah. So it was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for DLA, for Ramesh, related to playgrounds, the project in general? Appreciate the board just, the pause and the consideration, and we're continuing to move forward. And absolutely the communication pieces and just problem solving around the parking and play areas continue to be front of mind. If there's nothing else, then thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I know Kim has left. I think she's usually here in October, it seems, but October is Principal Appreciation Month, and I think there's a proclamation that the state puts out, the governor puts out around the state's appreciation for our principals. I just want to say during Principal Appreciation Month, sort of share I think I probably speak for all of you, just our appreciation for really our outstanding principal team. So Todd Gierman and Casimir Gorman, Pete Gatz, who you saw in the video, Kim Hefner, April May, and Chris Harvalis is our assistant principal over at Hauser. Just really an outstanding group of professionals, so dedicated to children, to our families, obviously to their staff, and making sure that there's just really great instruction that happens in all of our classrooms. It's a huge job that they have, and they do it incredibly well. So just want to appreciate all of them. Speaking of instruction in all the classrooms, the board is aware that the Illinois State Report Card comes out on October 30th. So I don't have any information to share at this time because we actually are not allowed to share the information. The student data is all under what they call embargo. So we will not be able to see information from other school districts until October 30th. We have our November 1st COW meeting planned, so I know Angela Dozel and the team are already sort of digging into the data and getting ready to bring forward a presentation. The board always gets a preview of the packet days in advance of the actual board meeting. The comparative data coming from other school districts will not be available to us to even put into our report until October 30th. It'll probably take us the 31st to put some of it together. So when the board even gets a preview of the data, you'll get a preview of district data, but not of comparative data. So. And then I know Angela's not here tonight to congratulate, but Nora is. We had a really great Institute Day on October 10th. I have the agenda attached for all of you just so you can, again, see the wide variety of professional learning activities that we set up for the staff members. And again, just as we say, hitting the nail on the head for about 165 different staff members who really have all very different, there's some common themes, but there's also a lot of different needs around professional learning and growth for each and every educator in this district. So October 10th was a great example of that work. And then Nora is here. This is always, I think we share this annually. This is the State Board of Education update on our educational determinations for special education services. It looks like not that exciting report on the face of it, but it really speaks to this big idea of ensuring that absolutely all of our children, and in this particular case in this report, our children with special needs with IEPs, individualized education plans, really are receiving services in what we call the least restrictive environment, which is the greatest access to general education, but yet receiving all the supports and services they absolutely need. So again, that you'll see that we have met on all those determinations, and again, it is no small feat. So thank you, Nora. And Pam, because as Nora was quick to point out, this is actually a report from prior year. So, and with that, that's the superintendent's report. Longest one ever, I think, Joel.
Thank you.
We wanted to get DLA and Ramesh early on the agenda, and seeing there was no action involved, that was the
No,
best place on the agenda.
That's absolutely, it's something that you're very close to, and you're going to be the recipient of many of the parent communications on that, as well as April and Pete, I'm sure. So.
It's just a quick comment, and I saw earlier, I think it was this week, you included in your email the importance of students attending school, right? And I noticed here too in the packet that a big piece for our district in getting a great grade on this report card is student attendance, right? 20% of the grade relates to whether or not we have students that are chronic absentee. And so I think, it's just important to continue to stress the importance of having students come to school. And it would be really interesting, I think, too, as we are sort of digesting the data from the state, to sort of understand what's behind some of our chronic absenteeism, right? Like, I know we talked about it in one of the meetings about learning a little bit more about whether it's sickness or whether there's just more of a tolerance for missing school because, if you can work remotely, maybe you can school remotely, and just like a sort of a change in culture and ideas around that. And so I think it's important for us to sort of understand and identify where the issue is so that way we can address it, right? And continue to sort of come up with a plan, at the principal level or at the teacher level to get back to where we maybe were pre-COVID, because the data that was presented a few weeks ago sort of showed that that's an area of an improvement for us, right?
Yeah, and we will take a closer look at some of that when we look at the state report card. I know Angela and I have taken sort of just a preliminary look and tried to break it down also based on our subgroups, and is there a particular group or student need area that may be more related to some of the absenteeism. I know in talking to April and Chris where, you know, we sort of make an assumption that more of it may be a middle school issue. It's not entirely that, but, you know, I think sort of the description is, you know, really a tailored and targeted approach, right? Because there is not one reason that children are missing school, and there's not one solution on how to ensure, but we do know that communication is a big piece of it. And so, you know, absolutely to your point, Selena, and it is why I very intentionally wrote it in there, like, you need to get to school. Getting to school is, yes, it's sort of an indicator of our school district success, but it's also where you learn. So if you're not getting here, we're, you know, how much of this is also seeing an impact where children then maybe aren't doing is, you know, really meeting their potential. So it is interesting to me that it continues to be a theme we're seeing. You know, you're all seeing it too. It's just in news. It's in a lot of the educational journals. It's just, it's a phenomenon that seems to have been exacerbated by the pandemic, but maybe really was part of sort of a growing mental health concern that was coming, pandemic or no pandemic, right? So I think it's a phenomenon that you know, educators are certainly seeking to understand so that we can address it effectively or more effectively.
Is that something that you know, like we're sort of tracking, and I saw this also attached in the report, and the board asked to see it, right? Like see the lunches that are being served on a monthly basis. I don't know, is it something that we're sort of tracking at the school and grade level on a monthly basis, or is that information that maybe the board would be interested in seeing on a trimester basis, just to make sure that we're on top of it? And is that possible to even report?
It's very possible, because Power School tracks attendance sort of, you know, daily. Again, and Don, I would sort of look to you, but something you and Jonathan could review. I was looking at if the board was interested in like looking at under informational items might be a way, you know, to, I think we track staff attendance. That was something that had come up from the board many years ago, just sort of one of the questions, what are we paying in subs, but also is understanding staff attendance. In the same way, we could craft a report, you know, again, just maybe gathering some more information on what we want to see. But my quick sense is, Don, it's not hard because the data comes to us every single day in our Power School system.
Just informing the parameters, what information you want to see. So we do our monthly enrollment reports.
A monthly attendance report.
What numbers we look at once a month or however often.
But out of context, like if we don't know, I mean, and I think Nora said this last time, that there's, you know, maybe more complex issues surrounding some of the kids who have more chronic absenteeism, that if we're just looking at numbers of kids who are absent out of context, is that going to tell us anything? And I don't feel like I'm privy to know why there are certain, that's not my business, like why certain kids have chronic absenteeism, if it's like a medical issue or a, you know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know. It would just be a straight up attendance report. What you would see, and I think that's the question you're posing, Selena, to the board, right? Is this idea of sort of looking at raw numbers. It wouldn't be by name. It would only be numbers in aggregate. If it's of interest, it's something that we would, you know, we're able to do with probably not tremendous additional effort. But what you're saying is, would it even be meaningful? So again, you know, yeah.
I mean, I think it'd be interesting, I guess, without knowing the root cause or why. If I mean, if we're seeing like 10%, I'm just making these numbers up, but we see like 10% and like 5% are because of medical. You know, okay, is that medical like a cold, or is that medical like because like when my daughter had her appendix out, she was out for a week. So, I mean, so just I think it's good information to have. I think it's going to pose a lot of questions that we don't have answers to yet. So I think we should track it, and I think it's something maybe we can put it in like in the board book, sort of under like superintendent's report, just so that we know what's going on to track it. But I don't know unless we know what the reason is. I mean, I'd like to know.
And I don't think that it's necessarily the board's role to dig into reasoning, like Martha said. It sort of needs to be like a tailored case-by-case approach. So if teachers or principals are sort of seeing that there's students or families that are having trouble with attendance, or, you know, if there's ways to create interventions, you know, I think that the board would sort of be able to see, like, look, you know, central chronic absenteeism has increased substantially. Do we need to sort of really come up with a plan around intervention? And do we think that this is more than just, you know, sickness, or, you know, just to sort of give us an indicator of, hey, do we need to sort of allocate resources towards helping this problem?
Well, it's interesting too I mean, we know that between pre-COVID and post-COVID, there's been a big change. So while we don't need to know, and we shouldn't know exact reasons, but knowing where things are going and having kind of that high-level description that you know that there were a lot of kids that were legitimately, that were sick, just regular colds and such.
So
I think you have a sense of that, or the teachers
Yeah.
do.
So what I can share at Hauser, because that tends to be more, and what I'm sort of debating about is it worth a board presentation, like a committee of the whole, an education committee item unique to its own. We've hired the ALAP person, as you all know, from West 40 this year. That's new, and I would say we're still sort of really getting the sort of effectiveness of that up and off the ground. Hauser also has, it's Mr. Aducci. He has periods devoted specifically to supporting kids who are arriving late to school or have had attendance problems. Our school social workers get very engaged with students that have had attendance problems. I mean, when it's a straight up, you know, David, to your point, you had your appendix out, there's nothing much you can do about that. It's more the absences that don't necessarily, that they really are chronic, that they seem to be repeated, not repeated 5 days in a row because of a significant illness. It's a couple days here, a couple days there, a couple days here, you know, things that fall into patterns, whether it's around weekends or, you know, we talked, certainly maybe not as much here, but school anxiety and school refusal are very real issues in communities, school communities, that kids that just struggle to come to school, not because of physical illness. And I would say that we have a lot of resources that we bring to bear on students with those kinds of needs. The effectiveness of it can vary, again, based on sort of the magnitude of the problem. So, and that's when I kind of say, like, being tailored and targeted and compassionate and communicative, those are all, like, if you were to describe it in general, those are words I would use, but that doesn't mean that this child who's not coming to school, who, you know, again, not for board information, but, you know, I know that child is seeing a social worker, that child may be seeing a counselor outside of school, that child may have a family who's working very hard to get their child to school, and there are barriers, you know, so what we want to do is make sure that we understand those barriers, that we look to address them, so if there are barriers that we can just get up and out of the way. You know, we had looked at even arrival time was that one. As you know, there's a fair amount of early morning supervision that happens at Hauser. Get here, you know, hanging out with your friends. If seeing Lily, the therapy dog, is, you know, is going to get you here. Like, again, many different layers and approaches here, with it being really that this effort that we want you here. Clubs and activities, you know, co-curriculars. One of the reasons why you all support co-curriculars and the way you support co-curriculars is because we know there are kids that come to school for the extra stuff that they get to do in terms of a club or an activity. It's having that relationship with a trusted and special adult. Those things sometimes are the things that keep kids coming, and they're really important. So
I appreciate all that information. I just, especially with it having been presented in the superintendent's report, and, you know, I know you've been communicative to the district and parents about the importance of it. I just, it seems like we've sort of identified a problem, and to all that you just said, we are putting a lot of effort to sort of fixing that problem, but it might be helpful to provide some additional information if you know, when the report card comes out and is publicly released, and if that is a big factor impacting the grading, to sort of be able to present what we have done and part of our plan to try to get us back to where we were pre-COVID.
what we could do, I mean, certainly as a district, we can come up with a you know, an informational item report that we could do monthly. It sounds like maybe there's still a little bit of like wanting to understand sort of purpose or context, or even as Don saying, the parameters. What we could do is there will be a piece of that information shared with all of you as part of the state report card. Even though you've seen, like we've shared data pre and post pandemic, there will be a difference. You know, there will be an item there. You've already seen those numbers, not because they were state report card, but because that was something we looked at specifically. It will be in the report card. Maybe we see where the conversation goes. That's our next meeting, November 1st. Committee of the Whole will be the kind of deeper dive into all the student data, and then maybe based on that, you could give me a response that says we'd like to keep looking at that, or we'd like to look at it annually. You know, you'll look at it annually in the state report card for sure.
Martha, with the preview, so just thinking about this, so in my industry in higher ed, our report card is the rankings, which are dictated by U.S. News and World Report, which creates via an algorithm. And this algorithm seems to change every year on how they determine. So I remember last year, Angela presenting on like the science proficiency, I think perhaps either being new or having a different percentage. Has there been a change in like the percentage of weight or even like in the chronic absenteeism indicator? Have you seen that increase in the percentage that they're weighing it?
So Angela speaks far better to the details
So
of it, but there is absolutely a formula, and all of these factors are weighted, and you know,
and I
so
just wonder how much it's changed. Again, I know the science one, I remember from last year she said that was more heavily weighted now, or perhaps weighted. But I wonder historically how chronic absenteeism has been weighted, because that is a pretty, it seems to maybe be an issue that is important enough that they are assessing
it's in the formula. It's in the formula, but has it changed? How has it changed
historically? Has it changed?
Yeah.
Was it attributed a smaller percent in the past, and now it takes up a pretty big chunk of the quality student success indicators?
Yeah.
Just, more curiosity. But we'll look forward to learning more at the November Cal.
Yes. It's a good point. I'm adding it to my notes for Angela, so we want to make sure, you know, as much as you can let us know the kinds of things you're interested in hearing about, you'll hear sort of overview certainly, but some of those more nuanced pieces we'll bring forward to share with all of you. Should we move on?
Good for now.
All right.
Would the board secretary read the consent agenda items?
Yes. Tonight's consent agenda consists of minutes of the September 6th special meeting, along with the corresponding minutes from the closed session during the September 6th meeting, the minutes of the September 20th regular business meeting, the personnel report as presented. Please note that the personnel report does include the hiring of the cafeteria manager, which increases the overall FTE due to the increase in number of days. Also, the payables pre-list as of September 30th and the payables pre-list as of October 18th. That is tonight's consent agenda.
Do we have a motion?
Does anyone need to remove an item or discuss an item? So I think, Joel, you'd ask that.
Yep. Do we
So
remove it and then?
Well, when anyone, are there any items for further discussion anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda for further discussion?
Seeing as there are none, could someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Kathy, can you call the roll?
Okay. Ms. Claps? Aye. Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Hunt?
Aye.
Ms. Gunn?
Aye.
Ms. Kalick?
Aye.
And Mr. Marlin?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I believe we do not have any representatives from Riverside Education Council.
Correct.
Are there any other board member comments?
I just want to throw out that a lot of, many of the people that I spoke with at the social we had on the 10th said that this was like the most fun, awesomest idea ever. I enjoyed. I saw Steph and Dave there, so I thought it was really nice to just kind of be able to chat with. I mean, I ended up kind of talking to more teachers that I already know, but they all loved it. They thought it was a great idea. It was really fun. We missed.
I know our board president was on his way back into town, so he was not able to attend.
I think it was originally his idea. So.
Yes, it was. Everybody said it was a great idea. So.
Yep, I was glad I was able to be a part of it and hope we continue just community engaging events like that with our own community internally in the future. Also, I didn't know if you were going to say anything about Saturday morning.
No.
just a couple, myself, David, and Wesley all got gold stars for attending the diversity, equity, and inclusion training on Saturday morning from 8 to 10. Kind of really heavy, important stuff to be discussing, thinking about. I really appreciated also having a view at the type of training that our district leaders and educators and principals are receiving. I thought it was really well done. Kind of happy to share out more. I don't have my notes with me. I participated professionally and personally in a lot of similar trainings, being a university employee. And I was really impressed with the content, but also sort of the workshopping as it related to the, to schools, to the work of boards, particularly. So very apropos to what we face and what we're doing. I can't remember all that were in attendance, but definitely some of our the high school members from Riverside Brookfield High School were there. Some other neighboring districts.
Right.
100, not 101, 100. There were a couple other people on that morning. So
it was interactive as well?
Yeah, breakout rooms, very interactive. I don't know that the two people driving their car realized that there would be breakout rooms, but it was like, you need a sheet of paper, draw this, write this down. Like, it was like you had to kind of be in the moment. It wasn't something you could be multitasking, driving and listening in. But I personally enjoyed that. I got more out of it in that format. But I don't know if people were prepared for it. I went back to read the email to be like, was it clear that this is what was maybe expected of us that morning? I don't know where I landed on it, but I felt I enjoyed it. So.
No, it was definitely good. Much more. It was done. I thought it was more to your point. I thought it was going to be much more sort of just receiving information. I didn't realize it was going to be some interactive, but you need that interactivity to make it to worthwhile. And so that I did appreciate. And so, but kudos to you because you kept your camera on. I just got up. I was still not presentable to be on camera. So
I did have some bites of bacon on camera. I was drinking my coffee and I was drinking my coffee and taking some bites of bacon. Whatever. Making it work. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity for bringing it to our attention and
Thanks for participating.
Other board member comments? Okay.
Dan and his wife got their picture taken with Big Head Fred.
Okay,
so
yes,
you know
talk
that-
about not being presentable. In general now, I think when I'm leaving the house, I'll be sure to wear a coat and tie like our member of the visioning board. That's probably the best idea. You never know when you're going to wind up on the Riverside Village Instagram page.
Oh, cool.
With Bedhead.
Big Head Frederick Law Olmsted has been visiting. He's visiting all 4 of the elementaries. He's been to Blythe and to Ames. He'll be at Central and Hollywood on the 25th and 26th or 27th. But yes, the Hunt family was arriving as Big Head Fred was giving out magnets and saying hello to people.
And so a special hello to the
My
Hunt
daughter in
family.
particular has a fondness for Freddie. I think she calls him Freddie. So likes to.
I'm trying to figure out if kids really knew him or it's just really fun to see all those big-headed characters
Recently
at your school.
at the quasi-board meeting that was the Riverside Hop Stop. He was at there as well, so the kids had seen him recently.
And he's in the 4th of July parade as well, I believe.
Well, I learned that the
He gets
costume's
around.
very, it's stored in Washington DC. It happened to be in Milwaukee, and they made a driving trip up to Milwaukee to get it, and that probably will not be available to us next year. That this was kind of a special thing, so.
Get your pictures now.
It's not
or-
just
Oh, wow.
a chance informal meeting.
I was gonna say, that wasn't the first time I've seen him in front of Blythe, so.
Yeah, he was here last year and this year, but I've heard maybe not next year.
Okay.
Mr. Gearman said, I'll see you next year, and she said, oh no, I don't know that we'll be back next year, so.
He's very busy.
Yeah.
Any other observations?
I do love that I've started following the Blythe Park Instagram account, and it is just fun to see how they communicate with their community through that page and share pictures of going-ons at the school. It's a really neat. I'm not even sure who runs it, but I think it's
Samir.
Is it? She's doing a great job.
I know she took the pictures. Most of the pictures are hers, yeah.
Very good. We have no old business tonight, and the new business item is the IASB joint conference, and most significantly are some recommendations and some new, sorry, I can't think of the word, new resolutions that are going to be discussed.
And I don't know that we need to, I mean, if the board wants to, we can go through them in detail. I know sometimes the board is sort of, well, Stephanie, sometimes there have been resolutions that the board feels strongly about voting on. The one that always comes to mind was a resolution about whether or not to arm teachers as a school safety measure. Others, I think the board has felt.
We've typically just aligned with what the committee recommends.
I mean, I took a look at the resolutions. They're actually very light this year.
They're so light.
I was
compared
sort
to
of
last year.
surprised.
They're
I'm like,
oddly light.
yeah, I was like,
I mean, there's certainly one that's, I know why it came in, which is the industrial development near schools. That's specifically out of the LT controversy.
but I didn't see it.
No, in my recollection, they, use a consent agenda for any of the ones that they recommend adopt on. And then the ones that do not adopt, if the district that brought it forth, they have to appeal it for it to then come to the floor. If they don't appeal it, then it doesn't even come onto the floor.
I forgot.
Because that was the one that we didn't disagree on. I was like, there was nothing for me to vote on because it didn't actually get appealed, so then they don't bring it forth at all. So it will be quick. I guess, I mean, I know some of us have discussed who's going. I was the only one that went last year, so I was the delegate. So I guess the first question would be, figuring out or finding out who the delegate will be. I'm not sure if that typically falls to if our president is at this meeting or if it's based off of interest. But whomever the delegate is, we would just need to equip them with the board's consensus on how we want to.
There's 5 resolutions, and 3 of them were the resolution committee said do not adopt, and then there's another 4 that aren't even supposed to be presented.
Right.
The reason they're not being brought forth, just reading those, is because there's apparently other resolutions out there that say essentially the same thing. So.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that.
I mean, yeah, they have the prerogative, to determine which ones are going to come forth or not, but they still present all the position statements to us in this document. And then, yeah, so who
Maybe
just
some additional discussion after everybody has a
chance to read them? Yeah, I
again.
haven't read them closely. I know I was planning to attend this year, and again, I don't need to be the delegate again. Somebody else wants that.
Yeah, I think some of the reason putting it on the board agenda too was certainly to discuss the resolutions if you'd like to in more detail. I think there would still be time at the November meeting, would be in advance of the conference. But again, this is probably historically, there has not, District 96 has not, Board of Education has not been very involved in going to the conference. We certainly, I know it was something that they talked about at the self-assessment. I know Lori Grant from ISB was suggesting to you the importance of attending the conference. And also, you all will receive the award, the recognition award at the conference. So somebody should be there to get the award. But also, the district will take care of registration and cost of the conference if you're interested in going. So some of it for right now is getting the dates out there, connecting with your own calendars if it's something you're interested in, letting Kathy know if you're interested in attending, and then the resolutions could wait.
I've always intended to attend, or at least a couple times I've intended to and not been able to, so I have to check my calendar again.
Given that Stephanie is intending on being at the conference, I'm happy to let her be our delegate. It seems like she's the only one with concrete plans to attend. But I don't want to put that
No,
on
I
you
mean,
if
like I said, it was,
you,
I enjoyed the experience. I'm happy to do it again. I forget what days I went last year. So it's like Friday. Looking at the agenda, because then there's like different roadmap. Like some of them were like very focused, and there were some that were like extra costs, certain tracks that came at an extra cost. Not to say that perhaps it wouldn't be a good use if we found that information or that session to be valuable to us, but I remember it being a little confusing for somebody who attends a lot of conferences professionally. I remember telling Martha, I'm like, I'm having a hard time navigating this conference. But the bulk of it was Saturday. But I also feel like I took Friday off and did some sessions. I didn't go to any of this. There was Sunday morning stuff, and I didn't do any of that.
We went to a session together on
Yeah.
supporting principals.
Saturday.
On Friday.
Friday, okay.
There's a lot. I mean, it's worth looking at the conference brochure that's probably coming to you on repeat from the IASB. If you're not getting it, we can make sure that your email is well known to the IASB. I think probably like a lot of conferences, there's probably some things that are worthwhile and there are probably some things that aren't. So, but it's really a matter of personal choice.
Then perhaps more solid thoughts next time we discuss this on people who do or don't want to go, and then any additional thoughts on the five resolutions, if there's any kind of consensus towards yes or no.
We'll definitely review it, but for once they seem to be pretty much, I don't know, they seem fairly esoteric. Not very many hot button issues. Actually, I'm kind of surprised given how many times over the last year I'm sure I've heard that, well, the legislature will fix this, and they didn't. There definitely was a lot of legislative intervention in school board matters over the past year, and again, with promises that some issues would be fixed, and then they've never come about to be fixed that I'm aware of.
Any other thoughts on IASB? If not, any additional public comment? All right, our future meeting dates: November 1st, Committee of the Whole, Blythe Park. November 15th, regular business meeting here, closed session if necessary. December 6th, Committee of the Whole, Ames. And then December 20th, back here for regular business meeting. Information items in the board book, and we are not entering into closed session, so I don't need to do anything else, do I, Dan?
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.